And now to the politics playing out over the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi. Senate leaders say they will now investigate the talking points given to UN Ambassador Susan Rice and why they did not reflect CIA findings shortly after the attack that was indeed a terrorist-related incident. On NBC's Meet the Press, Senate Intelligence Committee Chairperson Dianne Feinstein defended the White House against allegations that it changed the script for political purposes ahead of the election.
This whole process is going to be checked out. Right. We are going to find out who made changes in the original statement. Until we do, I really think it's unwarranted to make accusations.
And joining me now, Rachel Smolkin, White House editor for Politico, nationally syndicated radio talk show host and MSNBC contributor Michael Smerconish, and Democratic strategist Jimmy Williams, also an MSNBC contributor. Rachel, let me start off with you because I want to play a couple of other clips from Meet the Press. First off, let me play Lindsey Graham, because what we were hearing from Senator Feinstein was a response to some of the comments made, particularly by Mr. Graham and Senator Mike Rogers. Let me play it.
Would this White House mislead the American people about national security events? I think they might, simply because when the bin Laden raid occurred, they leaked every detail about the raid. We heard a lot of details about classified information to make this president look good. So if they would leak classified information to make him look good, would they withhold information to prevent him from looking bad?
It went to this so-called deputies committee that's populated by appointees from the administration. That's where the narrative changed. We do know that the intelligence community, as they presented it, was accurate.
The allegation that the White House changed those talking points, that is false. There's only one thing that was changed, and I've checked into this. I believe it to be absolute fact, and that was the word consulate was changed to mission.
So, Rachel, you heard just a snippet of what was playing out on these Sunday morning programs. What is your take? I mean, can this ever get to a point of conclusion, or, as Senator Feinstein said, of any kind of fact here with these allegations that maybe this was all for political gain?
With the testimony of General Petraeus on Friday behind closed doors seems to have only raised more questions about this. Certainly, it did not put an end to anything. Now we're hearing these questions about the talking points. General Petraeus said the CIA knew right away that it was a terrorist attack. And in fact, the original version of the talking points made reference to al-Qaeda and to terrorism. That did not emerge in the final set of talking points. So now there are questions about why was that taken out and who took it out. Was it taken out to protect classified sources? In other words, this was still very early on in the investigation. It was perhaps a tenuous link in the beginning. There may have been some concern over protecting classified information. We don't know. We don't have those answers. The White House, you heard Senator Feinstein saying they only made a small factual change to the description of the consulate, calling it a mission instead. Right. So if they didn't do that, then there are a lot of questions about who did do it and why. We are not seeing anything close to an end on this, and has quickly become a very partisan matter.
Absolutely. And Michael, not only are we far from the end, we are as far away from clarity as perhaps we were the day after this incident happened. What are people saying to you as they call in? Because obviously this, again, has become one of those hot topics that it depends on your perspective and perhaps even depends on who you voted for in the election.
Well, I think very much it depends on who you voted for in the election, because those who won't let it go, I tend to believe, are the partisans who never voted for Barack Obama to begin with. My own perspective, for what it's worth, is that I find the conspiracy theories to be illogical. I keep asking, okay, to what end would the administration or someone within the administration want to manipulate the narrative? What would be the political upside in keeping this under wraps from the American people? And Tamron, I don't see it. Why would someone be motivated to keep from September 11th through Election Day this quote-unquote secret? It would not bode so poorly for the president if, in fact, it was terror as compared to a spontaneous reaction. Remember, the original September 11, I think, was significantly responsible for the re-election of George W. Bush. So that's where it breaks down in my mind.
That's interesting. I want to read something from the Washington Post, Michael, and it says, if some or all of these top national security figures and or or their deputies were involved in the dulling down of the talking points, then it is not accurate to say the White House acted alone in spiking the talking points. But neither is it believable that on something this significant, the White House would not have been in the center of the action. I guess what's amazing to me in so many respects, all of the speculation from Senator Rogers having to be corrected by Feinstein. I mean, it's so much speculation. If there is a viable and credible hearing going on, we understand lawmakers love to talk and many of them love to get in front of the camera. But the reality is so much speculation in an almost incendiary form that is stunning to me in some ways, Michael.
You saw those elected officials come out last Friday and hold press briefings, and I'm saying to myself, why then did they even close the door?
Right.
Because now we have to pick and choose who we're going to believe in terms of those who come out and confront the media. So that's not a healthy process. Why not open the door and let everybody take a look at what's going on? One other quick observation. It seems to me that Ambassador Rice was parroting the intelligence briefings that she was being provided, and I think that's why Governor Romney dropped this issue in the final debate. Bob Schieffer's first question was about Libya, and he wanted nothing to do with it. Why? Because I think he was getting the same briefings as she was.
And speaking of Ambassador Rice, Jimmy, let me bring you in. Maureen Dowd, and I heard a couple of Republicans today say even Maureen Dowd is coming down on Susan Rice. Here's a little bit of what she had to say. Ambitious to be Secretary of State, Susan Rice wanted to prove that she had the gravitas for the job and help out the White House. She was focused on the performance, not the content, said one administration official. That's a quote in Maureen's piece there. What do you make, again, of the focus on Susan Rice and what some perceive as a lack of focus, really, on what former CIA Director General David Petraeus said or didn't say? I think it was only Peter King who came out and he gently worded it for Peter King that the story was a bit different.
Well, I mean, I think you're finding a scapegoat here. Then she's been put front and center, but at the same time, I mean, there's all this incendiary talk about Ambassador Rice, who's eminently qualified, by the way. The Senate did vote to confirm her 4 years ago, and so we know that she's qualified. The question is what's different now about Susan Rice than before? And I don't think there is much of it. But someone needs a scapegoat, both in the administration from a political perspective and in the Congress. Because the Congress does, in fact, have the right to investigate this, and they should. As a former Senate staffer, I think they should investigate it, and if they come up with something of wrongdoing, then so be it, and if they don't, then it'll be like a Whitewater hearing all over again. But Ambassador Rice is very qualified for what she's doing. She is qualified to be Secretary of State, and if President Obama puts her up, then the Republicans are going to have to filibuster her nomination.
And Jimmy, I think you'd be hard-pressed. There are very few people who would say, nah, don't investigate. I mean, listen, if there were concerns regarding security before the incident took place, of course the families deserve clarity. The country deserves clarity. We want to know that our diplomats, these people on the front line in these countries, for us, are protected appropriately. There are quite legitimate questions, which is why, again, it is so baffling for Senator Mike Rogers and even Lindsey Graham to throw out these political grenades, almost testing to see if they can explode.
Well, the reason that you're finding Lindsey Graham do that is because he is now in cycle, which means he's up for re-election. And notice that prior to a month ago, if you will, Lindsey Graham wasn't that much in the press on these issues. He was being very quiet, and he was out, advocating for Governor Romney to be president of the United States. And all of a sudden, they find an opening. And guess what? Lindsey Graham is utterly terrified, as the senior senator from South Carolina, of being primaried by a Tea Party candidate. So, who is the president's #1 critic as we speak? Lindsey Graham, who again is in cycle. So, I'm not at all surprised by something like that. The question becomes is if they want to have an investigation, vote to have one. Let's have the investigation and shut the hell up until the investigation is final and done. And then if there's a problem, say that there's a problem.
And quickly, Rachel, we're almost out of time, but can they get to the bottom of who changed the talking points? Is that something, because again, I was watching Morning Joe and there was a difference of opinion, if you could even pinpoint that kind of information.
I think they'll keep asking those questions until they do get an answer. So I think it is likely that more information will emerge about this. You know, the controversy over Susan Rice is so particularly interesting because the charges that are flying around have just gotten so personal. We heard the president call out Senators McCain and Graham by name at the news conference last week and saying, if you want to come after someone, you come after me. They answered by saying, all right, Mr. President, we'll come after you.
All right. Thank you very much, Rachel. Michael, it's a great pleasure seeing you. Jimmy as well. If I don't see you guys before.